news, hot news, hot news, hot news. What's up, YouTubers? Red Crimson Gaming 101 here. Today I've got some great news for you all. Check this out. Nintendo Switch 2 leak reveals huge display upgrade and major specs teased. A new leak suggests that Nintendo Switch 2 will have a 120Hz LCD screen with HDR and VRR support. Guys, this is huge news. I've heard YouTubers for months, years, spoke on everything rumored about Nintendo Switch 2, down to its display, down to the kickstand, the Joy-Cons, and what major third-party AAA publishers are willing to put their games, or correction, are going to put their games on the Nintendo Switch. But nobody ever spoke on what the hertz on the panel will be, and this has always puzzled me. But I would like to give myself a pat on the shoulder and would like to let you all know, the YouTube community, that I, Red Crimson, was the first one to inquire about this. I was always curious on what the hertz will be, and now we know. But let's go ahead and read into the article. The Nintendo Switch 2 is easily one of the most talked about upcoming consoles, and for a good reason, with rumors swirling about its release, hardware upgrades, and an impressive lineup of potential launch games. The hype is at an all-time high. While Nintendo is set to reveal more details about the console next month, leak and insider reports continue to give us an idea of what to expect. The latest leak focuses on one of the most important aspects of any handheld console, the display. This is true. If this new info is accurate, the Switch 2 could be a massive upgrade over its predecessor in terms of performance and visual quality. Nintendo Switch 2 specs leaks. So let's talk about the specs. The latest information comes from a user named Secret Boy on the Family Boards forums. This user previously accurately predicted the GPU performance of the Switch 2 before official specs were leaked earlier this year. Now, they're back with some new details on the console's display. According to Secret Boy, the Nintendo Switch 2 will feature a 120Hz refresh rate, HDR, high dynamic range support, and variable refresh rate, aka VRR, and an LCD screen instead of an OLED. In their words, they stated, according to the new leak information, the Nintendo Switch will feature a 120Hz refresh rate, HDR, VRR, and an LCD instead of an OLED. I've heard that the screen supports 120Hz and VRR, which should help a lot in handheld, although I will reiterate that the screen is 120Hz with HDR and VRR support. That's what I'm personally most excited for. So am I. I forgot to mention that it is an LCD. No idea about the actual quality of the screen, but I think OLED was always going to be too expensive for this feature set, which they needed to get into the first iteration of the hardware so that developers could optimize their games around it. If true, this means the Switch 2 could offer smoother gameplay with reduced screen tearing and a more responsive experience, particularly in handheld mode. It's a big deal because the current Switch OLED and even devices like the Steam Deck are limited to 60Hz, with Steam Deck OLED being 90Hz. A 120Hz refresh rate combined with VRR could make games feel significantly better, especially for action-heavy titles. Of course, as with any leak, it's best to take this information with a grain of salt. Nothing is confirmed until Nintendo officially reveals the console, but given this leaker's track record, this could be one of the most exciting upgrades coming to the Nintendo Switch. Okay, so before I start talking about the display, let's go ahead and finish up the article. We're going to talk about the specs of this system, and we're going to talk about the release date. So let's go ahead with the release date and see when this thing is supposed to come out. Aside from the display, we've seen several leaks about other aspects of the Switch 2, including its hardware, price, and launch games. The console is expected to launch in late June 2025 with a price estimated to be between $400 and $500. Reports suggest that Nintendo is planning to have around 6 to 8 million units ready at launch. Wow, that's a lot, which could help meet demand better than some past console releases. When it comes to games, several titles have been rumored to be in the development for the Switch 2. Some of the biggest names included a new 3D Mario game, potentially a sequel to Mario Odyssey, as well as Mario Kart 9 and Metroid Prime 4. Pokemon Legends ZA is also expected to be part of the lineup. As far as third-party support appears to be strong as well, with Dragon Ball, Sparking Zero, Tekken 8, and Elden Ring rumored for the console. There's even talk about Call of Duty and other Xbox titles such as Diablo 4, Fallout 4, and Starfield making their way to the platform. These are all good news, guys. So let's go ahead and get into the specs. In terms of hardware, previously have suggested that the Switch 2 will be powered by an ARM Cortex-A78C CPU with 8 cores and an NVIDIA T239 Ampere GPU featuring 12 streaming multi-processors and 1,534 CUDA cores, 48 Gen 3 Tensor cores, 2 ray tracing cores, and 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM. So guys, now in handheld mode, the CPU is going to be 998.4 megahertz. The GPU will be 561 megahertz. That's 1.72 T-flops in handheld mode. And the memory frequency in handheld mode is 4,266 megahertz, and the memory bandwidth is 68.256 gigabytes per second. Now in dock mode, things step up. 1100.8 megahertz. The GPU will be 1,007.25 megahertz. That's 3.09 teraflops in docked mode, guys. Memory frequency 6400 megahertz and memory bandwidth 102.4 gigabytes per second. With all these leaks and rumors floating around, it seems like Nintendo is preparing something big for its next console. The company is set to officially reveal more details on Switch 2 on April 2nd with a direct centered around the new console. What do you think about these rumored features? Would a 120Hz display make a big difference for you? Let me know in the comment section. Now guys, let's go ahead and speak on this. First of all, let's get the display out of the way. I was curious about this for a long time, and I was the first YouTuber to actually inquire about this while everybody else was worrying about the battery life and what AAA games would be released for the Nintendo Switch. Now we finally have an answer, and even though it's a rumor, I'm pretty sure more than likely that's what it is, because with games like Call of Duty pushing 100 frames per second, and you have the PC guys over there with higher frames than the console guys, so 120 hertz seems to make a lot of sense. It just seemed logical. Nintendo needs at least base level 120 hertz to even compete in Call of Duty with other consoles. So at this point, it's pretty much a given, right? But I'm so happy to hear that it's 120 hertz, guys. My prayers have been answered. This is really big news, and Nintendo is going to utilize the 120 hertz panel better than what the Legion Go and what the Steam Deck can do, because those PC handhelds, you can't use 120 hertz and 90 hertz on all of their games. Only a select few games, like very, very tiny. So it's more of like a marketing scheme just to get people to buy the console. But because the Nintendo Switch 2 will be a dedicated handheld, you best believe Nintendo's going to take advantage of the 120 hertz panel, and most of their games, especially indie games, will be able to play at 120 hertz, with 60 hertz being the base level. So Nintendo was going to show these PC handheld manufacturers how to utilize a 120 hertz screen properly, if not in all their games, majority of their games. But it's a given that the smaller indie titles, the AA games, are going to significantly take advantage of this new hertz. Man, I cannot wait to play all the AAA games in 60 hertz and 90 hertz, guys, on a Nintendo handheld, a console like that too. Oh man, I'm so excited. This is really good news in my book. So we're gonna move on to the specs. So a lot of you see, the thing I hate about the internet, especially YouTubers, like one person would say something false and everybody else would totally run with it. For a long time, people have been saying that the Switch 2 is going to be on par with the PS4. Guys, that doesn't make any sense logically. Even with the Switch Pro rumors before the Switch OLED was even released, Nintendo themselves said in an article, and you can Google this, guys, said to developers, get your 4K games ready. Nintendo have stated on so many levels that their system will be able to achieve 4K. If you look at the T239 chip, you look deeper into it, it's using features from an RTX 30 series card. Not saying that it's a 30 series card in the T39, but they're using some features, some custom features. It's a custom chip with some features from the 30 series cards. So, and Nintendo knows how to make consoles, right? So listen, guys, it's a more modern chip. I think the T239 chip is a chip from 2020. I'm not sure, right? But it's a more modern chip than a chip that was using the PS4 from 2013. So it doesn't make any sense. The PS4 and the PS4 Pro weren't 4K consoles. And the Switch has more RAM, I believe, than the PS4. Don't quote me on that. But that's even besides the point. Nintendo doesn't need 16 and 24 gigs of RAM just to make a game run and looks good. The fact of the matter is the specs is a lot better than the PS4 and the PS4 Pro. Those weren't 4K consoles, but the Switch 2 is a 4K console, whether upscaled or not. It doesn't matter. So that alone lets you already know that it's a more powerful system than a system that came out in 2013. It doesn't make any sense, guys. The current Switch has tons of PS4 and Xbox One ports. So Nintendo's not going to wait 8 years to make the same Nintendo Switch to play PS4 games. It doesn't make any sense. You have games like Ori the Blind Forest, which is a 4K game, 60 FPS on the Xbox Series X consoles, and that game is running on the Nintendo Switch and looks totally identical. So it doesn't make any sense, guys. You have to use your head, guys. You have to really use your head. Nintendo's not going to wait 8 years to make a PS4 base level console. That makes no sense whatsoever, guys. And not to mention, the PS4 and the PS4 Pro does not use the DLSS technology. So that already lets you know, coupled together with 4K, it's already a more powerful system, hands down. So this time, Nintendo's going to be getting most of the third-party games, if not all. And listen to me, guys. If Nintendo could get every single game that releases on both the Xbox Series consoles and the PS5 and some games on PC, it's a wrap. You're not going to need another console. This Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be the only console you need next generation. You won't need a PS6, you won't need a PS5 Pro, you won't need any Xbox Series console. Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be your one-stop shop for all things gaming. And it's good to see Nintendo in this position. Nintendo's president, he's doing a very, very good job. He sees what's going on in the gaming industry, and he sees that, hey, you know what? We kind of have to step it up. And that's what he's doing. I like this president. He's taking extreme measures. He's stepping up. He's stepping up to the plate. He's taking advantage of the technology, and he sees that if the Switch has the same games, the same third-party support with Nintendo's own first-party IPs, there's no way they're going to lose. They saw how good they did with the Switch. They got a lot of those so-called impossible ports. Nintendo's seen that people want these highly rated, mature third-party games on their system. So all the developers that didn't believe in a Nintendo Switch are kicking themselves in the butt, and they're all on board with Switch 2. Man, this is going to be one hell of a year. And I'm happy I'm alive to see Nintendo on top like this. And just like everybody else, I'm dying to see this console. I'm dying to see what games are going to be launching for, what games are going to look like on this thing. Oh man, I can't believe it. So guys, that's all I have to say on this matter. I don't want to make this video any longer than it is. This is really great, exciting news. This is what I always wanted to hear. What screen hertz panel are they going to be using? And yes, LCD, I think, and that's fine. I have no issues with the LCD. I'll tell you what though, the Legion Go has the best LCD I've ever seen on a handheld. And if Nintendo can at least match that or exceed that, make the screen a lot brighter, man, I'm golden too. Another thing that people do not talk about, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to be done with the video, is the sound. One thing about Nintendo, they always skimp on sound. Their sound volume is always low. They don't put a lot into their sound. So hopefully with heavy third-party support, Nintendo realizes that, hey, you know what? We are going to need to step our sound chip game up and have these games sounding nice and loud. And more so with a headphone, even better. But we need these speakers to rock, to knock your ears off. So here's Nintendo. Here's hoping that Nintendo steps it up, and also the sound department. This is the greatest news I've heard from the Switch so far. The launch lineup, guys, you already know. Elden Ring, Tekken 8. If we're getting games like that, you already know the Switch is going to be powerful. Anyway, guys, like and subscribe if you're new to my channel. And if you're already subbed to my channel, keep showing me that love so I can keep on making these videos. Red Crimson out.